On July 21st, the skies above Hong Kong shifted from a gentle gray to an ominous shade of steel. The air was thick with a suffocating humidity, as if nature was holding its breath. Along the harbor, boats swayed more violently than usual. In the bustling districts of Tsim Sha Tsui and Causeway Bay, shopkeepers cast nervous glances upward, sensing what satellites and weather maps had already confirmed. Typhoon Wipha was no longer a threat in the distance. It was imminent. By noon, the Hong Kong Observatory issued the no 8 gale or storm signal. Across the city, businesses began to shut down. MTR services started slowing, and a deep sense of unease settled like fog. The people of Hong Kong, seasoned veterans of summer typhoons, began their rituals, taping windows, stocking up on essentials, checking for. But this time, there was a difference. The meteorological data painted a troubling picture. Wipha wasn't just passing by. It was bearing down with full force, and its trajectory would carve straight through the heart of the city. At sea, the typhoon had already shown its strength. Formed over the South China Sea days earlier, Wipha gathered power with frightening speed. Warm ocean currents fed its fury, and what began as a tropical depression quickly evolved into a full-scale cyclone. By the time it reached the coastlines of southern China, Wipha was categorized as a severe tropical storm, just shy of typhoon classification by international standards. Yet with winds strong enough to peel the skin off buildings and push waves into the streets like they were battering rams. In the city's northwestern district of Xuanwan, construction cranes swayed like toys. Across the city's glassy skyline, clouds churned and twisted in unnatural shapes. And in Xunwan, one resident, Mrs. Lei, 68, looked out from her high-rise apartment and whispered, "It's coming." While many residents took refuge inside their homes, others could not afford to. Delivery drivers rushed to complete orders. Hospital staff prepared for a long night. Emergency shelters opened their doors. On social media, images of dark clouds and frantic preparations began flooding timelines, accompanied by hashtags like hashtag WIPHAH and hashtag Typhoon 225. The government activated its emergency response protocols. In a press conference, Chief Executive Li Mei-ying urged residents to stay indoors, avoid unnecessary travel, and be mindful of landslide risks in the new territories. "We have mobilized all available resources," she said, standing under flickering lights in a crowded room of anxious journalists. But nature is unpredictable. We ask the public to take this seriously.
For the city's poorest residents, many living in subdivided flats or aging structures, there was no luxury of safety. "My window frame is already loose," said Mr. Rachel, a delivery worker living in Sham Shui Po. "Every year we go through this, but this one feels worse."
In Kowloon Bay, the storm surge pushed water levels dangerously close to street level. Sandbags were stacked outside metro stations and government buildings. The city's iconic trams were halted. Ferries were suspended. Flights were grounded. By 6:30 p.m., winds had exceeded 100 kilometers per hour. Rain lashed against the buildings in sheets so thick they looked like waterfalls. Lightning cracked the sky like electric whips. And then, just after 7:15 p.m., Typhoon Wipha made landfall. The full wrath of the storm unfolded over the next several hours. Trees that had stood for decades were uprooted in seconds. In Central, scaffolding collapsed onto a luxury car dealership, shattering glass and sending sparks into the air. In Mongkok, neon signs were ripped from the windows and hurled into the streets below. In the fishing village of Tai-O, rising tides overwhelmed the seawalls. Residents there, some of whom still lived in stilt houses, watched in horror as waves surged into their living rooms. "It was like the ocean came to get us," said Chan Wai, a 42-year-old fisherman who had lived in the village all his life. We've had floods before, but never like this. Power outages were reported across multiple districts. In Seungkwan-o, a transformer exploded, lighting up the skyline in a surreal burst of blue before plunging several blocks into darkness. Emergency lines were flooded with calls from the trapped, the injured, and the terrified. In the eastern district, a nursing home had to be evacuated after part of its roof collapsed. Volunteers carried elderly residents through ankle-deep water as wind howled like banshees overhead. "I couldn't hear my own voice," said one caregiver. "Just wind, just fear." MTR trains were suspended entirely by nightfall. Tunnels flooded. Bus stations were wrecked. Even the Cross Harbor Tunnel, the city's vital artery, was closed as flooding threatened its underpasses. As midnight approached, a weary silence fell. The eye of the storm had passed. By the midnight hour, torrential rain had swept through countless vulnerable neighborhoods, and the death toll began to emerge. Communities fragile even in fair weather were facing their greatest challenge. Across the city, authorities confirmed 33 people treated for injuries, including 2 critical cases, a toddler hit by falling debris and an elderly woman who collapsed amid waist-deep flooding. Among them was 72-year-old Mr. Chen, whose apartment in Sham Shui-po collapsed when gale force winds tore through an aging rooftop. His neighbor, Yoon Man, recounted the accident. The ceiling fell in while he was sleeping. He called my name through the rubble until we got him out. He's unconscious, and we're praying he wakes up. In Seungkwan-o, the nursing home evacuation saw 12 elderly residents suffer hypothermia and shock. Nurse Lee Kwan said, some were confused, some frightened. Their familiar corridors had become rivers. Wheelchairs were abandoned in floodwater as staff and volunteers waded through chaos to rescue them. Still, amidst calamity, many moments of compassion surfaced. In Xiangshui, volunteers from a local youth group churned out hot soup for displaced residents at a temporary shelter in a school hall. "We had 150 people in the classroom," said volunteer Wang Ying. "People were cold, hungry, scared. That bowl of soup gave them warmth." On Lantau Island, fishermen navigated waist-high water to ferry seniors trapped in hillside villages. "We've survived typhoons before," said elder fisherman Peng Chi. "But tonight, this feels different. We do what we can." Across Murdoch Road in Kennedy Town, a small group of residents formed a human chain to help carry a wheelchair-bound woman through waist-deep water to safety. A makeshift raft fashioned from plywood and life jackets moved her and others to higher ground. "We couldn't wait for help," said one rescuer. "We helped each other." With power out in half the districts, cell service glitched. Families used Twitter, WeChat, and word of mouth to report missing loved ones. At the height of the crisis, one message went viral. "My aunt is stuck in the basement of Yoma TI station. She can't swim." Within hours, rescue boats arrived. But not all pleas ended in relief. In Saigon North, young newlyweds found themselves stranded in their flooded home. Their baby, just 3 months old, fell ill. With no electricity or clean water, conditions deteriorated quickly. By dawn, paramedics arrived but too late. Their grief echoed as a stark reminder of the storm's cost. Hong Kong's Volunteer Emergency Task Force, assembled from fire services, police, NGOs, jumped into action. By early hours, more than 8,000 first responders were deployed. Teams helicoptered into isolated New Territories villages. Speedboats reached submerged estates. In Saigon, officials set up a coordination hub at Yangshuo Primary School. Food supplies, blankets, water, and medical kits were distributed. One relief coordinator, Chan Kin, said, "We brought what we could, but routes were cut off, bridges gone. Everything had to go by boat." The government also opened 34 shelters, hosting over 270 evacuees. Many spoke of uncertainty. "I didn't know where home began." wrote one evacuee on a public bulletin. Despite cramped conditions, volunteers organized kindergarten corner tents, and local women prepared steaming congee for displaced families. For Hong Kong's essential workers, Tsuen Wan's streets remained vibrant even as wind howled across rooftops. Hospital staff worked through unbroken shifts with backup generators sustaining ICUs. In Kowloon's Tsuen Wan West, firefighters rescued a pregnant woman trapped in her flooded apartment. For paramedic worker Li Qing, what stood out was her calm. She smiled when we took her to the boat. That strength, I'll never forget. Delivery drivers, like Mr. Liu, braved uprooted roads to deliver medicine to the elderly. No job can wait, he said. I knew people waited on those pills. Writers later called him the midnight courier of Wipha. While frontline responders risked their lives, the media race grew intense. Journalists chased visuals of flames from transformer blasts, collapsed scaffolding, stranded boats. Video bloggers broadcast live using short-range drones, capturing the wind's force as if it were tangible.